What's up, guys? Welcome back to the pod. It's the Week 9 recap, Week 10 preview. Is that right? I think that's right. Had not as good of a slate last week, but there were some decently interesting games. I think this week is a little bit different. I think we have a pretty damn good slate this week. Tonight it'll be, obviously, you can see Steele and I, and then David from New Orleans is on the. I was about to use my dad's bar as the sponsor, like I sometimes do, but I forget the new name, so that's kind of embarrassing.
Rebranded.
Rebranded. I think it's like Bourbon and Barley or something like that. But yeah, he's on that hotline. So yeah, we've got 4 ranked versus ranked matchups, and I guess that could actually change tomorrow night because the playoff rankings come out tomorrow night, and that's what will be the new ranking. So maybe there's like a team that's not AP top 25 that will jump in there, but we're not going to try to speculate that right now. So we'll go into the normal schedule for the pod, though. We're going to recap the 3 ranked games last week. We're going to go over some winners and losers, some bets, winners and losers there, and then get into the preview. So let's get right into it. Last week we had Georgia versus Florida. That was the first game that we previewed, and it was a game that I think we felt like was going to be a little bit closer, like we would lean Florida, but Georgia pretty much dominated, and surprisingly to me, I mean, it wasn't surprising to me that they couldn't run the ball again because Florida couldn't really either, but I guess I was a little surprised that Fromm came out and did what he had to do to kind of take over that game, and finally Felipe Frank showing his true colors, and maybe that's what was going to hold Florida back all year. Your thoughts about that game, Steele?
Yeah, I think Georgia was the better team. I think they proved that, but I don't think they solved any of their issues going forward, which could be a problem. Maybe not so much this week, but in the SEC title game, if they happen to make it there against a Bama or a pass-heavy team, like you said, Felipe Franks isn't the key success for attacking the secondary. I was actually pretty surprised and pleased with how Florida kind of gave away a couple of like bad turnovers early, but actually battled back to keep the game close. I was very, very, very impressed with their defense. Their front line has been, kind of talked about on this pod a couple of times to stuff them on the goal line, like 6 or 7 straight plays.
Yeah.
With some bad refereeing to keep them out of the end zone was just amazing, quite frankly. But obviously the offense just couldn't do enough to stay on pace with what Georgia had offensively with Fromm and his playmakers. So interesting to see how Georgia goes forward with their matchup next week, and obviously Florida out of the playoffs.
Yeah, so we're going to preview Georgia, Kentucky coming up for the SEC title, which I don't think anybody was going to predict that.
Oh, really?
That game.
Oh, really?
No, I meant like at the beginning of the year.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe you did like 4 or 5 weeks ago. But which that's still pretty good. But yeah, Georgia 6.6 yards per play. Florida only 4.74, and that's, like I said, mostly because of Fromm being much more effective than Franks. Georgia starting field position was the 40-yard line in this game. Florida was only like 24, and then the turnovers we mentioned. So I agree with you. Before I hand it to David for his thoughts, I think that even though Georgia dominated this game, I don't think they really solved a lot of the problems that they have as far as being able to run the ball. They did stop the run a little bit better than what they had previously, but I'm curious to see them against another very physical team in Kentucky, and we saw what happened with LSU when Georgia plays a physical team, but we'll see. So, Dave, did you have any other thoughts on that game? What did you think about Georgia?
Yeah, I do. So I was actually worried about Georgia in the spot going into the game because of Florida's pass rush, which I think is pretty elite. But Fromm had a great day, seemed to handle it pretty well. I thought that Georgia, what made them so successful last year was the running game with Nick Chubb and Sony Michel. And I thought Georgia started off the game running the ball with Holyfield and Swift, and then Fromm kind of went off and they abandoned it. So I was hoping to learn a little bit more about Georgia to see if they could get back on track with their running game. Even though they won, I don't think we learned anything about that. And I think really the only thing we learned is that below Alabama, when you look at kind of the next tier of SEC teams like Georgia, Florida, Kentucky, LSU, there's not a lot of separation.
Yeah, I think that's pretty accurate. So, yeah, we'll find out even more about Georgia coming up with a physical test against the UK, and we'll preview that in a little bit. But we'll move on to the next game that we previewed last week. That was Iowa at Penn State. And it was it's funny, like, when I didn't get to see really any snaps in this game. Yeah, but I think if somebody just looked at the box score and saw the actual score, they would have thought that this game was, like, pretty even for the most part. But it seems like when I dug into it, Penn State actually controlled the game for the most part. Iowa had to have some turnover luck. They had a pick six that kept them in the game.
They didn't score an offensive touchdown.
Yeah, they had two safeties. They had a pick six.
Their only quote offensive touchdown was a fake field goal.
Yeah, it was out of a special teams formation.
Right. So, yeah, obviously the point being made then is that I think Penn State actually controlled the game pretty well. They averaged a full yard per play more than Iowa did. Iowa only averaged, I think it was 3.9 yards per play in this game or something like that. When I looked at Bill C's like post-game win expectancy, Penn State was 95%. So they controlled this game. I mean, there's not really a lot to take away from this game for me other than that Penn State's a good team. I think these are both good teams, but I don't think these are playoff teams. I think Penn State was knocked out of the playoff when they lost to Sparty, and then I think Iowa was knocked out of the playoff on Saturday.
Yeah.
Your thoughts?
Yeah, another playoff elimination game. I mean, for Penn State to even be considered to get back in it, they're going to need quite a bit of chaos. Iowa, just with it being their second loss and the timing of the loss,
yeah.
they're essentially completely out of it altogether. Odd that they scored that many points, that none of them really came from their offense. That was kind of a statistical anomaly.
Yeah.
I was impressed with McSorley coming back from kind of like a tweaked knee in the game to kind of lead the team to victory there. Sloppy conditions, kind of just a weird game overall. But as far as, contenders go, both on the far outskirts looking in. So
yeah. Dave, your thoughts on that game?
Well, I'd liked Iowa to win the game. I thought that the way that their offense is playing, they were going to maybe be more physical than Penn State and have a good chance to win the game. But they got too cute. They did a lot of weird, fake special teams plays of, like, punters throwing the ball and multiple quarterbacks in the formation. I thought if they just did their straightforward physical offense, they might have had a better chance. But
yeah,
they were there. They were there at the end. Stanley threw a pick with like a minute to go or whatever.
Yeah.
Stanley had a terrible game. Their receivers dropped a lot of passes. It was just overall sloppy. I think that if Iowa had played better, they probably would have won the game.
Yeah, I agree. I think if they played anything close to what they had been playing, they would have won the game. So yeah, like we said, I think both these teams are probably out of the playoff, especially Iowa. And let's move on to the third game of last week's recap. That was Washington State at Stanford. This game was interesting when I dug into it. It was pretty much like the tale of two halves. I think Stanford controlled the first half, and then Washington State took over the second half. Gardner Minshew, who, in my opinion, is all of a sudden like a Heisman Trophy candidate. I mean, he was on fire in the second half in this game. Washington State, I believe, averaged like a half a yard more per play, but the game, for the most part, seemed to be pretty evenly played. Washington State seemed to pull it out in the end, and I think kept themselves alive in a playoff hunt again.
Looky. Mr. Pirate is still alive. Kind of how I predicted the game would go, high scoring. There would be plays to be made in the secondary for Washington State against Stanford. I kind of thought Stanford would be a little bit more physical in line, where they did control the line of scrimmage, at least with their run game. And KJ Costello, once again, side through the air multiple times. Pretty good game just overall, just in terms of entertainment value.
Yeah.
But Stanford obviously completely out of the playoff. And the sole hope of the Pac-12 is the Pirate. And many folks were down on him this year.
Yeah, they keep finding ways to win. Gardner Minshew's the real deal. They actually are pretty decent on defense too, and especially I think their pass D has been pretty efficient.
So where did their defensive coordinator get snatched to?
Ohio State.
Was it?
Alex Grinch, yeah.
Oh, okay. So my comment was going to be, I think there's some lag and leftover of what he installed in terms of philosophy and obviously players.
Yeah.
And hilarious that your defensive coordinator, your defense sucks right now.
Well,
that's funny.
I think he has a Grinch has like a decent amount of input, but it is still like Shiano's show, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I would imagine...
Time to close that.
We don't need to get into any Ohio State talk. We don't need to talk about top 40 teams. But I think I could imagine if Urban grew some balls that, if there were changes to be made or like more responsibilities given, Grinch would get more. You don't just take a guy from like a Power 5 program. Like he had done this before with Tom Herman when Tom Herman was the OC at Iowa State. So we've seen Urban make these power plays and try to scoop up these good corners. But neither here nor there. Washington State pulls out the win. Dave, do you have any other thoughts on that game? What do you think about that?
So I really hadn't liked the way that Stanford looked all year. So I actually bet on Washington State. I think they were +3. That was one of my more confident bets of the week. Nick, I totally agree with you. I think Minshew definitely should be in the conversation for the Heisman. In that comeback, he completed the first 19 passes in the second half and finished 28 out of his last 29.
Not bad.
Very impressive.
Yeah.
But to end this conversation, though, the Pac-12 did a horrible job marketing this game.
Yes.
It was a very important game for the Pac-12 North. It was on Pac-12 Network.
Yes.
Which, like, I think most of the country doesn't have. Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah. So, Washington State's still alive. Pirate just showing his genius once again. Looky. So, let's move into our winners and losers for the week. There were, I think, a lot of nominees on both sides of this. Dave, why don't we start with you, and then we'll just kind of work our way from there.
Yeah. Well, we already talked about it, but Gardner Minshew was one of my winners. The other winner for me is Northwestern. The way that things played out on Saturday, they're very much they control their own destiny in the Big Ten West. They got a couple big games coming up, but I think just the way things played out with Purdue losing, with them beating Wisconsin, they were my number one winner from the week. And I guess, do you want to come back for my loser, or
you can give it now if you want. If you're ready, I can go to Steele. If you're not,
let me think about loser for the week for a second.
I'll tell you what. Let me go. I'll get to you in a sec. Let me give, because this is way back in our thread. I'm going to give Addison's losers or winners and losers for the pod. So he had 2 winners this week. He had Oregon State 28-point comeback for the first time, or for the first conference win in 2 years. That's a pretty big win for them. And maybe on the flip side, that will be my loser. But Northwestern, he also had big win in the Big Ten West race, he said. Losers, he's got Florida State tied for their worst loss in the history of their program. TCU, who he had been high on until literally Saturday, I think, completely collapsed this year. He said losing to Kansas is rock bottom. Yes. And then he said ACC defenses in general, terrible defense all weekend from this conference, very Big 12-ish. Steele, winners and losers?
I alluded to this last week, and I said if they win, they're going to be a winner. And Kentucky football.
UK again.
Blue Cat football is going to be playing for the SEC East title after their monumental comeback of a 15-14 point win at Missouri after some shoddy refereeing. Missouri played some really stupid, weird defense, essentially like a weird prevent on like the second to last play to let Kentucky get to the fucking 10-yard line, which just is like, hey, here's your like free shot at the end zone, essentially, opposed to trying to keep them a little bit further out.
Right.
So that was hilarious. And so they would be one of my winners. Who else? I don't even know.
You don't have to have another winner. You can just have one,
It's one.
You have a loser? Here, I got a loser from Corey that I think we all can agree on. Virginia Tech this week played on Thursday night, okay? They played Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech scored touchdowns on 7 of 9 drives. They won by 21 points without completing a single pass. They ran for 465 yards at 6 yards per clip. So, yeah, Virginia Tech's a pretty big loser this week. Again, they're a 2-time loser of the week now in the pod. I believe UK actually has the most ongoing record for most wins at now 4.
Yeah.
So
they keep winning.
And we started with their first one, if you remember, was just the fact that they won a football game. With them in Kansas, we were like, hey, they won a football game.
And now they're going to be competing.
So that's pretty crazy. And then Corey had the Pirate. He had Washington State as a winner. It seems like that's a pretty popular one this week. Dave, did you come up with a loser by chance before I give mine?
Yeah, I guess. I have 2. So one, first loser was Washington. Their offense all of a sudden is terrible now. Jake Browning got off to a very great start to his career, but I think it was probably because he had those receivers, Pettis and Ross, that are now in the NFL, and maybe he's just not that great of a quarterback.
Right.
My second loser, Nick, I'm guessing this is one of yours too, is Colorado.
Oh yeah.
We already talked about what Oregon State did. On the flip side, Colorado blew that lead with 35 points to Oregon State. That's pretty bad.
Yeah, I could go with one of my losers would be Duke's defense.
Oh yeah.
Whatever it was, 50 points, 50-some points to Pitt.
Screwed us with our bet.
It's just
it's unacceptable.
Didn't we all have Duke?
Yeah, I think all three of us had Duke.
All three of us did. Yeah.
What are you doing?
What are you doing?
I mean, to give up that many points to Pat Narduzzi's Pitt team is pretty horrific.
And Duke was up 10 for most of the game.
Yep. Just to relive one of our, what I would call, I don't know if it's a bad beat, but we had a couple kind of punches to the gut this weekend with some of our bets that we'll get into. But, dude, Colorado's definitely my loser. This program that we thought was probably fraudulent this year, but was winning, ranked, all of a sudden they've lost, I think, 4 straight games or something like that. They, obviously, to cap it off with the huge collapse against Oregon State, who has been a rock bottom program in that conference. So pretty awful. Winners, I mean, I think we covered a lot of teams and players pretty well. I was going to say Gardner Minshew, Washington State. I mean, they're just proving that they're obviously exceeding expectations. So, some pretty good winners and losers. Kentucky continuing their record amount of time to being a winner on this podcast. And then Virginia Tech, their second loss of this season as a winner. So we will now move
Florida State's probably the loser of the year.
So Florida State probably is actually 3rd or 4th time now, which, I mean, they should be. They fucking suck. So, let's move into our bets now. And I think I can pull up on the docs here since you don't have that. Dave, if you want to give one of your best bets and then one of your worst bets, and then I can move on after that.
Yeah, sure. So worst bet was I took USF plus 7.5 against Houston, and I think USF, even though they were undefeated, they had not played anybody, and they turned out to be frauds. So that was a bad bet. Good bet, and I continue to do well with these bets, is betting unders in games involving Mississippi State. They just don't put up a ton of points. Their defense is pretty good, so I think I've hit on that multiple times this year, and took the under Mississippi State, Texas A&M, and hit on that.
Okay, yeah, no, those are solid. Steele, you had
Bees.
Georgia Tech. I would say was your best one. Yeah,
Bees.
clearly we covered that. They slaughtered Virginia Tech.
Iowa kind of being there throughout the entire game and covering, and then having a chance at the end. That kind of sucked, and then same with Duke.
Yeah.
Those would be two of my nominees for just not bad bets, just bets that were there that got taken from me.
Sure. Corey had one of his winners. He had Clemson minus 16. Obviously, they absolutely destroyed Florida State.
Rough week.
Rough week overall for Corey, but yeah, he did hit on that one. And then his worst bet, I mean, he had Miami minus 3. He had A&M plus 2. Virginia Tech minus 3. I mean, those are pretty bad. Addison's lone winner. He only bet 4 games again this week. He had Washington State plus 3.5. And then we kind of talked about it in the loser segment. He also had Washington minus 10.5. I was surprised that he had that because he doesn't usually take double-digit favorites. But he felt pretty strongly in that game, but was wrong. Yeah. And then for myself, I had the Georgia Tech, Virginia Tech over of 59. Steele and I were watching this as it transpired, and I almost had it at halftime, so that was pretty good, I guess. And then I had A&M plus 3 at Mississippi State. They didn't show up. They're not good. So that will cover our bets from last week, and now we will get into the Week 10 preview. Like I said at the beginning of the pod, we've got 4 ranked versus ranked games this weekend, and there's actually a lot of other solid games where like maybe one team's ranked and the other's not or whatever. But first game, we got our Blue Cats again. We got Georgia at Kentucky for the SEC title, pretty much officially. I guess we'll start with David since he's got some SEC ties down there now. What are your thoughts about this game? And the line right now, I believe, is 9.5. Which way would you lean?
I would lean towards Georgia just because I think they're the more talented team. Kentucky has won some games this year, but I think Georgia's probably the most talented team they've played. In order for Georgia to win, they're going to have to have a good running game going, and I think that they will be able to do that. So right now, I'm leaning towards Georgia.
Okay. Steele, your thoughts?
Yeah.
Your lean, if you got one.
I just love when people doubt my Blue Cats.
Blue Cats again. Blue Cats.
They thrive in an underdog role. It'll probably be a no bet situation for me, but just in terms of just like situational matchups, it being at home, them shutting down essentially Drew Lock from Missouri, a pretty prolific offense that Missouri had. I mean, Kentucky's defense is for real. Their issue is passing.
Yeah.
But Georgia's weakness in the pass defense is there. Some opportunities there for them. I think that's a possibility. So I think thriving off that home field environment. Lexington's going to be pretty crazy for that type of atmosphere playing for the SEC championship, which quite honestly I don't know if they've ever even won it.
I don't know. I mean,
not in the last 20
yeah,
years.
They haven't competed for it in like a long time if they have.
So that'll be a crazy environment. I think it'll just be imperative for them not to fall down more than 14 plus points. I mean, a 10-point game at half or into the third quarter, where they're within striking distance would just be ideal for them. But like I said, their defense is for real, and I think they'll be in it at the end, hopefully.
You brought up a good point. I meant to look up like Georgia splits as far as like how they've done with like first half covers and like because I think it's important that UK doesn't get too far behind in the game. And not only is this not even a lean, I already booked Kentucky plus 10. The reasons for that is that I don't think UK is like that great of a football team. I think they're pretty anemic on offense at times, but Georgia has struggled in the trenches this year with a lot of different teams. Like they actually struggled on both sides of the ball, or both sides of the line against Missouri, even, who's not really that physical of a team. So I think UK's physicality is going to make up for like a lack of balance on offense. And, against Mizzou, that's actually like the one game I was able to watch a little bit of. I was in Kentucky in the middle of nowhere, and they had it on in this brewery. And whoever the kid is at quarterback for UK, he actually made a couple throws at the end of the game that, had them in the game. They weren't it's not like they're a great passing offense, but if they can do just a little bit, just enough to balance it out, I think Snell and the offensive line that could be a big problem for Georgia, and I'm not so sure. I actually disagree with you, Dave, a little bit that I'm not sure I've seen enough from Georgia up front on offense to where I don't know if they're going to be able to consistently be able to run the ball. And what you alluded to, Steele, is I think it's probably a top 5 defense in the country right now. But Georgia certainly has more talent, and I wouldn't be shocked if they ran away with this game, but I don't think this is like the same Georgia. I haven't seen anything from Georgia this year to indicate to me that they're going to be able to match the physicality. It's just UK just is a poor man's LSU, in my opinion. And so
I agree with you. I don't think we've seen that from Georgia yet this year.
Right.
I just have a hunch. I just have a hunch that this is the week that they're going to get it going.
Okay, yeah, and that's certainly possible.
So.
Yeah. So we've got a couple leads with UK, Dave with Georgia. Certainly should make for an exciting game for the people in Lexington for the first time, and who the hell knows, maybe ever. So the next game is going to be West Virginia at Texas. So we've been saying all year on this pod that we've been waiting to preview West Virginia and Will Grier just because they haven't really played anybody yet. The one team that they played that has a heartbeat kind of kicked their ass up and down the field in Iowa State when they played in Ames a couple weeks ago. I guess my first thoughts in this game before I give any – I'll actually go to Steele first this time, but I think, can Texas replicate the physical ground attack that they had versus Oklahoma against West Virginia? I think West Virginia struggled at times with physical teams under Holgorsen. But Texas has been pretty liable in pass defense this year, and that's obviously where West Virginia excels. Your thoughts about this game, Steele? I believe the line is, I think it's Texas 2.5 to 3. Maybe some books have it 1.5.
Where's the game?
It's in Austin.
Texas.
Okay.
Texas is a bad road team. I think they just showed their true colors. Just whenever it was, Saturday.
Yeah.
Oklahoma State.
Yeah.
Just being able to play in front of a huge home environment obviously gives them an extra little juice in terms of that. Greer, their pass defense, suspect at times. So we'll be seeing if Greer is taking additional shots downfield or not. But like you said, Holgorsen, kind of fading and not doing so well against more physical teams. So I like Texas in that spot.
Okay, Dave, what do you think about that game?
Yeah, I like Texas. I just think they're more physical. I think home field advantage. This could be a game where Texas secondary, maybe their pass rush, give Will Grier a little bit of trouble. So I like Texas.
Yeah, earlier in the day I was leaning West Virginia just because my thoughts were I felt like they were probably pretty close to being evenly matched teams. And if that was the case, I felt like taking the points made sense. But it's kind of what we've talked about in this pod and what we hear about from other pods. It's kind of the nuances of the game. Texas is coming off, a tough loss at Oklahoma State. They're coming back home where they're much better at home. West Virginia is certainly a good team. They could prove maybe their worth in this game if they come out guns blazing. But I do think that what you guys alluded to is the main factor in this game. Is I just think when Texas needs to be physical, they can be, and West Virginia just really has struggled with that at times. So I think Texas will look at the Iowa State tape and try to basically replicate what they did. And I'm not sure West Virginia is going to be able to do enough to match that physicality and to stop that. So I actually kind of changed my mind. I do think I would lean Texas here, but I think this is a clear no bet for me. I don't know about you guys. It's too close either way. But if I had to lean, I would lean Texas.
It's gonna be a no bet for me. I think this is a 3 to 7 point game, and right now the line's been hovering around 3.
Right.
So that's too close for me.
Okay. Yeah. So the third ranked versus ranked game, we've got Penn State at Michigan this week. I believe that line is at 10 still. Dave, I'll go to you first. What are your thoughts about that game? Which way would you lean?
Probably going to be another no bet for me, just because Penn State's been wildly inconsistent this year. So, you could catch them on a good day, and, they may be able to cover that 10 points. But I really like the way Michigan's playing right now. I think they're playing the best out of anybody in the Big Ten. I think they are very, very physical. That they're gonna control the ball. They're gonna have they're gonna control the time of possession. I see them pushing Penn State around. I see Michigan winning the game on the field, though I probably won't bet it because you could get some. I feel like it's one of those you could get some magical plays out of Trace McSorley late in the game and mess with the spread.
Okay, Steele.
Yeah, totally agree. Spot on. Penn State's just kind of like coin flip, heads or tails. You're not really sure what you're going to get. Could be good, could be bad. I think it'll be an overall pretty competitive game. I'm still not 100% sold on Michigan's offense. It's just like go in there and blow them out. It's at home, obviously.
Yeah.
But they just don't strike me as a team that just jumps on you quickly to get a quick 21-point lead. They kind of grind you out, obviously in the trenches. Defense is playing phenomenal. So they just a special teams touchdown or a turnover here or there, they can kind of stretch it out over overtime or over the period of a game. But I think probably about a 14-point victory for Michigan at the end. But overall, a watchable game.
Yeah, I think that's. I think you guys nailed it pretty well. I guess a couple points I'll add is that correct me if I'm wrong. Michigan's off a bye, are they not?
Off a bye.
So they're off a bye, and Penn State's off a pretty physical game against Iowa. I would look for Michigan to wear them down in the second half, I think, and that's where they get the cover, I believe. I think this will be a no bet. But I would lean Michigan just because I think they're going to be fresher than Penn State. I also think that Penn State's been, even though they've been inconsistent, I think the heartbeat of their offense this year has been their run game. I think Michigan's going to probably, I think it's possible that they force Penn State into becoming more one-dimensional. So I would lean Michigan, and I think they're just going to kind of step on their throat at the end of this game and probably do win by about 14. But I do think it'll be competitive. I wouldn't be shocked if Penn State had a shot to win it at the end. But like you guys said, we have no clue. They've been so inconsistent, we have no idea. But we'll move on to what is the primetime game of the week. Finally, we are previewing Alabama, who, by all accounts, is possibly one of the greatest football teams in the history of the world. We haven't seen them really get tested yet. This is going to be the week that they get tested if they are, in fact, tested there. They've got LSU at night in Baton Rouge. Dave, this is your neck of the woods. What is the overall feeling from that LSU fan base? Do they feel like they can pull off the upset?
Okay, so first of all, this has to be addressed because this is something that people are still talking about in New Orleans is the Devin White targeting call that is causing him to be suspended for the first half. If you guys recall, Tiger Stadium was booing the entire last 5 minutes of the game. And even through commercials, they were booing the whole time.
Yeah,
and it was a terrible call.
Oh yeah.
So I think that's going to factor into the game. There's not a lot of confidence down here about LSU winning, but we do believe that it will be closer than 2 touchdowns. I think with Devin White being out, the strategy for Alabama, at least in the first half, I think they're going to go to the run game more. playing LSU, it's probably the first team that they've played this year that can cover their wide receivers. So I don't think we're going to be seeing these 70-yard darts by Tua in this game because I think those receivers are going to be covered. So for me, look for Alabama to run the ball early, have middling success doing that because I think LSU's defensive line is great. But I think Alabama pulls away in the second half, but does not cover the 2 touchdowns.
Okay. Steele, your thoughts about Edo and their chances? Which way would you lean against the number?
Yeah, probably going to be just a no play in my book.
Yeah.
But like you said, a lot of people think Bama might be one of the best teams ever, but it could be also based on who they've played so far.
Sure.
LSU is going to be a real test for them. Death Valley at night, we all agree, is the hardest, if not one of the hardest places to play. Home field advantage there is worth a couple more points just based on how crazy and ruckus it can be. It's going to come. I think really it's going to depend on the first drive. If one of their Bama receivers does get open and Tua hits them early and it's 7-0 at the 13:30 mark, people are just gonna be like, okay, and just kind of fold, quite frankly, just because they anticipate the avalanche coming. But if LSU can force a 3-and-out or a mildly short drive from Bama stalls and force them to punt, it might be an old-fashioned Bama LSU game where there's some field goals and kind of a grinded-out type game, and I don't know, maybe Saban and the offensive coordinator kind of pull the reins back on Tua, not kind of fearful that he might make a mistake.
Yeah.
Just on a road hostile environment where he turns the ball over or something. So I really think the game, the pace of play, and the over/under and every aspect of the game is going to be dictated by Bama's first possession, because I don't anticipate LSU driving on Bama and scoring. So it's really going to be, does LSU's D show up and force Bama to punt on their first possession and kind of just settle into that game?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely it's going to be important for LSU to keep the crowd in the game for as long as possible. And I actually anticipate that being the whole game. I actually did bet LSU yesterday. It's more of like, this one's more of like a gut feeling. I just think they're going to bring it and bring everything they've got for this game. I think that it's going to be interesting to see how Alabama responds to any kind of adversity because they have faced zero adversity this year. It's going to be interesting to see Alabama face a very physical football team and what happens when they get punched in the mouth for the first time, if there is a first time. Could Alabama run away with this game and win this game by 3-4 touchdowns potentially? I mean, according to the metrics, LSU's been pretty average most of the year, but at the same time, according to the metrics in this game, I think LSU's closer to like 11 or 10 points. And so I actually think there's a little value at 14. I think kind of going with what you said about, not letting Bama kind of go for that quick strike right away, I think it's going to be important for LSU to have balance on offense, to possess the ball, I think more important than anything in this game, they need to be good on third down, and they need to set themselves up with manageable third downs, because if they all of a sudden go through this stretch of 3-and-outs, I don't care how good LSU's defense is, you're not going to hold Alabama's offense down for that long. So I think it's important that they move the sticks, stay ahead of the sticks, and all that cliche bullshit that they need to do to possess the ball and keep Tua from having it too often in this game. But I think Dave made a good point that LSU's secondary is possibly their corners are possibly the best pair of corners in the country. So maybe we finally get to see Damian Harris carry the football in this game, and maybe, like you said, it could be one of those more old school, ground and pound type of games. But I do think
I think that's the only chance that LSU has. I think they have to keep the game close so LSU can continue to run the ball, because if LSU is forced to go to exclusively the passing attack to try to come back, I think that's bad for them.
Yeah,
I think that's the scenario that Steele mentioned, that Alabama just runs away with it because LSU just if they have a balanced offense, their passing attack is good, but forced into an air raid, they're not efficient enough.
Yeah, I agree. It's not what they do. It's not. They don't have the same. We've talked about this extensively in this pod this year when we've talked about LSU. They just don't have the playmakers they usually do around Burrow. And, Burrow's been pretty efficient. He's been smart with the football. He's been smart as far as putting the team in the right plays. But I think this is going to be definitely Alabama's first test, and I'm just interested to see how they respond to any kind of adversity. So any closing thoughts from you guys for this week? Any other games that you wanted to mention? Steele, quickly, there's a lot of people on Northwestern +8. How do you feel about your Irish going into the Raucous Evanston campus?
Ryan Field?
Yeah, Ryan Field, baby.
Yeah, the burning money is what they're doing.
So Steele feels pretty confident about his Irish. Dave, I don't know how about you, but I actually, if I was not an Ohio State fan, I would have bet Nebraska 3 days ago. I think they opened like +24 or something like that, +24.5, and that number's down to 20.5. But quickly, as an OSU fan, do you expect OSU coming off of a bad loss in a bye week to come out and stomp Nebraska, or do you think OSU's woes continue to come to fruition and Nebraska keeps that game competitive?
I think Ohio State off a bye week comes out and stomps Nebraska.
Okay. All right. So that's a possibility.
I think every team has their wake up call. Ohio State has theirs. They'll figure it out.
Okay. All right.
Anytime people think Nebraska is going to give Ohio State a game, you guys fucking crazy.
That's true. What's the first game you took your wife to? I believe we won by 60 points.
Yeah, it was embarrassing.
63. I think it was 63-0.
What's his name died?
Oh yeah.
They killed him.
Yeah, the quarterback died. Yeah.
Was it Armstrong?
Tommy Armstrong.
Yeah, really, the only time Ohio State struggled with Nebraska was when Joe Bauserman was the quarterback. So.
Yeah, who's that? What year was that? So yeah.
Look up Joe Bauserman passing chart versus Nebraska from like 5 or 6 years ago.
Oh, I remember it being absolutely atrocious. I actually think if you look up another game where we won, I think we won where Braxton literally had 14 passing yards, or maybe we did lose. I don't remember. I think we won. We won the game because Addison always laughs about it. He says, "Oh, we beat a team with literally 14 passing yards." Another shout out to Georgia Tech beating Virginia Tech by 3 touchdowns with no passing yards. So, so I think we covered a pretty darn good slate. Looking forward to these games. Looking forward to seeing what Bama does against LSU. And until the next pod.